Civilization. It's like Settlers, but good. It's Amigos, episode 381. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about civilization.
Yeah.
You know, Aaron, on this show, we tackle the big questions. The meaning of life, the purpose of existence.
Yeah.
Do you think that civilization is in decline or is it on the upswing?
Well, you know, as someone who is taking an in-depth study in recent months on the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and kind of gotten my knowledge bomb of what happened. Every society has its ups and downs. There's no doubt. And some downs are more permanent than others.
Sometimes ups outnumber the downs.
That's true. And a lot of people, I've noticed over the years, everyone thinks they live in the worst time. Like when Reagan was president in America, there were a certain amount of people like, oh, we're all screwed, you know. And then sometimes when Clinton or whoever said, oh, we're all screwed. There'd be a war here, Desert Storm, we're all screwed. If you go back and listen to old radio shows like I do, like you'd hear stuff from like the 70s, the 60s, they were screwed all the time. And let me tell you something. You think you're hosed now, listen to a BBC broadcast of a radio show from like the 40s. Those people were really screwed. Like they were hosed. So there are varying degrees of how up and down civilization is. Do I think we're screwed? Absolutely not. In fact, I think we got it better than we've almost ever had it. It's just that people have changed, and I don't think they appreciate what they've got as much as they could, if I'm honest. In terms of civilization, like in terms of the world, I think the world is on the upswing. I do. I'm an optimistic guy. I know there are environmental concerns, and we've got wars here, and people disagreeing with stuff here, economic turmoil, right? But I mean, none of this stuff's new. It comes in waves, right? I think we'll get through it, and I think when we get out the other side, we'll be better people for it. Hopefully, at some point, we can get our heads out of our butts, get together, and make the world a better place on a more permanent basis. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that as a somewhat of a student of history myself, one of the things that I've learned is that it really wasn't until the Enlightenment when we started to think about civilization as being this sort of like on an upward trajectory that only keeps going up, where we're trying to reach perfection as a species. If you go back to the Middle Ages, people viewed civilization as a big wheel. And sometimes you're on the top of the wheel and things are great. And other times you're on the bottom of the wheel and society's collapsed again. Who knows where we are in that particular point of time? It's sort of like the old Romans, you know, nobody knew that the empire was collapsing when it was collapsing. And so the way I look at it is stay positive, hope for the best, and keep on checking out what's been going on this week's Amiga News.
Amiga News.
All right, Aaron. You know, there is a new blog. When was the last time you heard about blogs, Aaron?
Well, our good buddy Rob Flacco here keeps a blog that I follow. That's probably one of the few ones I actually follow.
Blogs used to be a big thing. Yeah. Everybody had a blog. Did you ever have a blog?
No, I'm not that. I can't. What am I going to talk about? I got nothing. You know?
Well, if you are a reader in the blogosphere and you are interested in adding an Amiga focused blog to your RSS reader, you should check out ronnieyoung.net. This is our friend Ben's from the Discord channel. He has started his own blog talking about his experiences and his adventures with the Amiga. This is he just started writing it back just like 3 days ago, but he already has several posts up talking about his background with the Amiga and upgrading different things. And there's one called Amiga Quirks and Delights I was not expecting. So this is I have not yet dove into this. This is one of my weekend projects, is to get caught up on this, because I like Ben's. He's a good guy, and I like blogs. I want to see blogs. I want to see more blogs and less YouTube channels. So, you know, I'm a big fan of this sort of thing.
I like his song, Ben's the two of us need look no more. Remember that one?
Is that Styx?
No, that's Michael Jackson, dude. Come on.
Oh. Oh,
Ben?
Ben.
You didn't-
Okay.
I know I'm not a
Yeah.
great singer. I'll admit
Well, you
that.
sounded like the guy from Six, but you
Well,
always
man,
sound
are
like
you
that.
kidding me? I can't get up in that at times.
Yeah,
Listen,
Ronnie James Dio. You sound just like
he's
him.
not in Styx, you knucklehead. He's in
What?
Dio. Anyway, listen, Ben's is a good guy, and anyone that cranks it up like instantly, like look at this, he's already got 4 chapters or whatever. You're right, that's a good sign. So good luck, Ben's. We'll be watching.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Aaron. Next up on the docket, it is time to talk about Simulant's Amiga Classic USB
Oh man,
mechanical PC
Yep.
keyboard.
There, it finally happened. After all, the deal was done.
This thing is shipping now to both pre-purchasers, and these are also in stock if you want to pick one of these bad boys up. Aaron, I know that you are a recent convert to the cult of the mechanical keyboard.
Yeah.
What do you look for in a mechanical keyboard? I know that you have one that you like using. What were you when you were shopping? How did you choose the one that you chose?
Well, you know what I like to do is I like to do careful study on the mechanism used in the pressing No, I don't care. Clicky and colorful and maybe also cool looking. Those are my things. And cheap, brother.
Clicky, it's the 3 C's.
Yeah, I don't. You know, these people are like, I don't like the feel of the switch, the blue switch or whatever. Come on, this is the same thing with those freaking joystick buttons. Get over yourselves. It's a keyboard, man. It's the least important part of a computer. But this looks great. I mean, if you're going to drop some WAD on a keyboard, it might as well be, you know, an Amiga keyboard. You know what this would go good on both? It's the old, right here, the old Amiga Mini right here. You can stick one of those bad boys right on there. You know, you got the mouse, then you've got the full Amiga experience here. And these things, like you said, you can go buy them right now and have them shipped to you. No wait, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if you have a Checkmate case, instead of using that sort of what's a nice way to put it, abomination that you put your A500 keyboard into.
Listen, they did. What are you gonna do? They played the hand they were dealt on that. It comes
out
of the 500.
Get yourself a svelte Amiga Classic USB mechanical keyboard from Simulant. Listen, man, if you are on board the Amiga hardware train and you're spending, you know, £600-700 on a monitor Kickstarter, you're ready to step your keyboard game up and get yourself one of these mechanical keyboards. £140. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because think about all the times you use your keyboard. How many strokes are involved?
I don't know what a keyboard. What's a great keyboard cost? They cost like hundreds of pounds,
this much,
right?
Yeah, I mean, if you are serious about typing, you're going to spend hundreds of pounds on your keyboard. Why not get one with classic Amiga style?
Plus, listen, Simulant's our boy, good guy.
He is our boy.
He's been around. We were around when he was like prototyping this bad boy. We were back in the day. And it's been a couple years ago, hadn't it, Bo, when that was going down?
Yeah, it's been a couple.
Congratulations, man. You got to the end, and for all you folks out there that picked these up, let us know what you think. Drop us a note.
Aaron, our next story. Congratulations are in order to one Stephen Jones.
Yes. Oh, I got a lot to say about this boat.
His retro style, I'm going to read this verbatim. Retro styled modular IPS display for old and new systems. Something tells me that Stephen is also his own marketing department. This is he has reached and surpassed his Kickstarter goal. He wanted 250 grand. Right now he's at 309 grand, and there are still 45 hours to go. Aaron, tell us your thoughts on this particular piece of hardware.
You know, myself and our good pal, old Shifty O-Rom, we've talked about this quite a bit in private messages, and I've mentioned it on here occasionally. And when this thing came out, I'm not gonna lie to you, brother. I thought I gotta give Jones. I gotta bow down and apologize to this guy, because I thought there was. I swear to you, and you know this because I told you. I thought there was a 0% chance that this sucker was getting funded. $250,000 for something that doesn't come with a screen, and the specs are iffy. Like, you know, who knows, right? What the final thing's going to be and when you're going to get it. You know, I thought there's no way that this is going to happen. But man, this guy, I will say this, it was down by about 100 grand in the last week or so. And man, the media blitz was on. Nostalgia Nerd did a show on it. I've seen stuff on my Facebook, on Twitter, everyone going crazy. And they pulled it in. And now this thing's up to 310 large, all right? That's cash money, boat. And again, these are monitors that come with no screen. They got no screen in them. You got to pay additional money to get the screen. I thought there was never a chance it was going to happen. There are very few people that could have pulled this off. Very few. Because you've got to have, I mean, this guy, I can say without hesitation, is the most trusted man in all of the land of Amiga. There is no second place. Stephen Jones is over like Rover. So all the credit to the guy. Now, the one thing I will say about Mr. Jones is he delivers on what he says he's going to do. I mean, you pay the price, but he delivers. And I have no doubt that he's going to come up with some kind of pretty good monitor here. I just didn't think the concept behind it was going to hold water. But, man, I was wrong, big time wrong. And I'll admit it, man.
I was big time wrong about this, too. I thought there was no way that the Amiga community, or I guess the retro community, would pay the price that was asking here. And let's take the whole aspect of it not actually coming with the display out of it. Let's just say any flat panel display.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was a need or a want in the community for another kind of flat panel display. When I think about Kickstarters that would get funded, you know, that are monitor based, I think if somebody were able to come up with a new way to manufacture, say, like a color vector monitor of some kind, say some sort of like retrofit kit for a Vectrex, or just a color vector monitor for arcade games, I have no doubt that would be funded if you could get it done, in a certain price point. But flat panel displays, I thought the book was pretty much written on those, and if you wanted one, they were out there in whatever kind of flavor you wanted. But this just goes to show that I know nothing about this community, and what they want is totally different than what I thought they did.
And I went on a small series of insane rants in the Amiga hardware section of our Discord about this when I saw it got funded, because there's so much of this that doesn't make any sense to me. The fact that, I mean, this thing has these interactive pods that click in and out of the back to do different functionalities, which is interesting. But, I mean, a lot of this thing hinges on the same graphic interface card that you bought and destroyed. Do you remember the arcade conversion board? Remember that?
Now I have heard that the model that he's using is not the same that is commonly available for cheap on eBay.
I zoomed in on that thing and copied the numbers down and then looked it up. And as far as I can tell,
maybe I was informed.
I held one up to the screen, brother, because I've still got the one you mauled. Now. But, I mean, any way it goes, let's say it's a super Whamadine version. It's the same basic bear, homie, And so you put this and then everything sort of runs through this. And he's talking about hooking up, like, having pods for the Retro Tank and the OCCS. I'm thinking to myself, why would you want those? I thought that was the whole point of this thing was to not use those. But clearly, there are uses for this that are beyond my ability to ascertain. So for the folks that chipped in on this thing, good luck. I'm sure you'll get what you want. And to Stephen, congratulations. I mean, like I said, I didn't think you were going to pull it off, and you did. And I'm glad he pulled it off. But it is, to me, this one I find sort of baffling in a lot of ways. But like you said, you never know what the people want. Sometimes you got to tell the people what they want, brother.
That's right. All right, Aaron, we move on down the line to talk about Chris Edwards' latest video. This is brand new out of the gate. I have not watched it yet. It just went up 7 hours ago. But I know you've got something to say about this, because I think you used to have one of these things back in the day. It's the old 386 SX bridge board.
I wish I had a 386 one. I'll tell you that right now. I did not. The one I had was a not anywhere near as nice as what he's showing here. This is a Zorro slot board for a 2000 or one of the big box Amigas. Mine actually fit inside of the 1000, if you can believe that. And so these things here were pretty neat. Now I haven't seen this since it just came up, and I've been at work. But I do know a little something about the old bridge boards. You got to understand, Boat, and I don't know do you recall how fast the first DOS-based PC was that you owned? Right off the top of your head.
The first DOS-based PC I owned was an XT clone, so it was incredibly slow.
So it predated the 386 even. So you were in. I didn't know if you were in for the whole March.
I jumped straight from that XT to a Pentium 90. So
that was a huge leap.
I never had anything like this.
Yeah, well, bridge boards were great for the Amiga. I loved them. I still love them. That's the one thing I'd like to have the big Amiga for, is just to get a real nice one, because it was so much fun to get my geek pals over and be like, look at this, and then load up DOS crap. The problem is it ran like garbage on the, because, but it's still, they couldn't run any Amiga stuff on theirs. Here I'm running DOS, and I'm running the Mac.
So were you, like, what were the limitations of what you could effectively run? I mean, were you able to load up like Doom and go to town?
Go. No. This thing would run CGA barely. The bridge boards they were meant for stuff like Lotus and WordPerfect, the DOS
business applications.
Right.
Okay.
They sure as heck weren't built to play games. Now, what did I want to play with it? It wasn't Lotus. I can tell you that right now. I wanted to play Lotus free. I wanted games on that sucker. So the bridge board didn't do me a ton of good. But the one thing I did like about it is, like, you could transfer files with it. Of course, you really didn't need a bridge board to do that, but you could do that with it. You could run basic applications on it. On the one I had. Now, a 386SX, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Plus, if you've got one of the big box Amigas, if I'm not mistaken, you could add video cards. You could add, network. You could, because the slots are ISA slots, so you could add cards, PC cards to your Amiga to get the functionality of it. Then you got something. So I'm actually looking forward to watch this, because I am a big fan of the whole bridge board thing, because really, what other computers were doing this sort of thing? Not that many.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to think about what other computers came at this point in time, came in big box format that could even afford expansion like that.
Yeah.
The big box Macs, I'm sure there were PC. Well, I don't want to say I'm sure, but I think that there were some kind of PC bridge boards for like the Quadra and stuff like that. The old 68, the really, really high end 68,000 base Macs.
Yeah.
But of course, once you got much further than that, you're getting into the era of Macintoshes that just don't have that sort of, room on the inside of the case to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those old high-end Macs. Now, I've never gotten to mess with one, and I'm sure you have. But I always heard they were. I mean, of course, they cost a fortune. That hasn't changed. But I heard they were hot rods back in the day. They could do a lot of crap you wouldn't expect, and that doesn't surprise me that they had bridge boards for them, or some sort of PC emulation. So kind of neat. But the Amiga, probably the only computer that had the ability to emulate both the Mac and the PC, at the time, especially. So I love this. I'm anxious to see it. Chris always does good stuff, and check him out, everybody. Chris Edwards, good stuff.
And just to follow up on that, I just did a quick search. In 1993, Apple announced what was called the PC Houdini card for the Quadra. I figured if it was going to come out for anything,
cool
name. It would be the Quadra.
Yeah.
It used a 486 SX25 CPU, no FPU, and only basic speaker sound. So it was limited.
That's not bad, though.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could somehow use your onboard sound to get some kind of, better sound.
I'm going to do some YouTubing later tonight, see if anybody's done something like that.
I miss those old days, because in the old days, if you had the bridge board, you just boot off of a disc. You got your DOS disc set up, and then you're in there. I mean, you could do stuff. It even gave you support. I'm trying to remember if I ever used the PC side to do any online, like BBS stuff. It seems like
was there more functionality for BBSs on the PC side than the Amiga side, or was it all, since it was terminal based, it didn't really matter?
There was a tipping point where I stopped using the Amiga to get online, because you got to remember, I used the Coco at first. You talk about pretty remedial stuff, although there were some decent terminal programs that came out eventually. The Amiga was a step in the right direction, but for the longest time, I used a program in the PC called Telex, and that was the program I was comfortable with, and that was my main driver for BBS. But most of the time I used Telex was after I'd gotten rid of the Amiga. So but the Amiga did fine. Most, like I said, BBS is pretty much anything can run them. That's a good thing about it.
Right. All right. Well, we have one more story, and this is another sort of long-running theme on the podcast. This is the black keycaps are now available from A1200.net. Of course, the keycap project, the ongoing saga, continues, and black keycaps are now available for the Amiga 500 plus, 600, basically all the big box, everything but the Amiga 1000 appears, or the original 500.
Yeah, we always
and
get screwed.
Yeah. And so you can pick these up. They are 73 pounds or I'm sorry, 73 euro. You can pick these up at a1200.net. Are you a big keycap guy, Aaron? Now that you're in the mechanical keyboard space, you have the ability to swap out your keycaps. Have you done that yet?
Well, I have not. However, a little birdie got hold of me this week, and I may have a hands-on demo of these in the near future. And with full credit to the birdie once the effect goes down. So yeah, listen, it's nice to see those two little words underneath there, in stock, in stock. These are good to go. I know some people are really into the aesthetics, and we are low end boat in a lot of ways because we don't
almost
care.
Every way. I
mean, when it comes to like hardware, I mean, you're like me. If it sort of functions, you're in, brother. And I'm not. I mean. I want the computer to look good, but it's not killing me. You know what I mean? I'm an old school guy where the computer was just a big dumb box that you perpetually swap software out of, And so it's hard for me. I look at computers a lot of times like toasters or something. It's just like, once they're done, they move them out the door. But I'm trying to become more appreciative of the look of the machine. There are some beautiful machines out there, some good looking machines like your TI-99s and whatnot. And you can absolutely, I've got the black keyboard on my Amiga over here, or the black case that was given to me, and it looks sharp. And so I can absolutely see the appeal. And the price, I don't know what keycaps go for, but I do know that the euro and the dollar aren't too far off right now. I just checked this week to see what they were going for. So this wouldn't be the worst time if you're in the States to grab these, while the getting's good. I don't know how much lower the euro is going to go with the dollar. So these looks like a pretty good deal. And of course, I'm sure they'll be fine. They'll do a good job.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's Amiga news, Aaron. So why don't we move on down the line and talk about one of the guys that makes all the magic on this show happen, and that is Frank and his team of wizards at RetroRewind.ca.
His team of wizards. It makes it sound like they're doing some black magic up there, brother.
Well, they are up in the toe. That's what they call Toronto.
Is that what they call it? That's a horrible name.
It's the toe of Canada.
That blows. Listen, one thing that doesn't blow, though, is RetroRewind.ca. Top shelf parts, top shelf service, right across the board. Frank and his crack staff. They take your Commodore computer, they take your CDTV, they take your TRCD color computer, and they take these things very seriously. Do you need replacement parts sent to you so you can take care of business on these things? Frank's got them, and they're top quality parts. Do you have the ability to fix these yourself? No? Don't worry. Send them up. Send them up to Canada. Frank will take care of you, and he'll do it old school for old school pricing because he doesn't rip your arm and leg off to make a deal on these things. He makes you a good solid deal and gets the turnaround time quick. Frank's got tools like diagnostic ROMs. He's got updated Kickstart ROMs. He's got SD card solutions, Boat. He's got accelerators. He's got T-shirts. He's got floppy disk park, cardboard device. He's got everything you need to take care of your Commodore or TRC color computer. He's the man to go to, Boat.
That's right. And if you load up your cart with goodies and sign into your account, make sure you use the promo code Amigos10 at checkout. You can save yourself 10% off Retro Rewind's already low, impossibly low prices. We thank Retro Rewind for being a longtime sponsor of Amigos and for being just great people. And we hope, fingers crossed, we'll see him again at Boatfest this year.
Now, speaking of Boatfest, bam, we got to speak about Boatfest. What was that face you made there, Boat?
That's that whenever a curtain opens and I'm behind it, that's the pose I assume.
Because I told Boat this week, we're not going to sit here and peg Boatfest for the next 4 months. It ain't going to happen. But I told Boat, as a public service, and just to clear my conscience and clear his conscience, we're going to talk about these tickets. Because the tickets are now available, correct, Boat?
Tickets are now available.
Now, and percentage of tickets sold in the past week, less than a week, you sold what percentage of the tickets?
Well,
about 10, 15%?
the room that we're in has a strict capacity due to fire marshal reasons. And so we are only allowed to sell a certain amount of tickets. 20% of those tickets are now gone.
And so I told Boat, I said, listen, it's hard to talk about the computer festival that we host without sounding like an arrogant jerk, okay? But I'm just going to lay this out here. These tickets are all going to go away, all right? I'm going to a big party tomorrow night with all the locals around here that were at Boatfest, and I'm going to tell them the same thing I'm saying now. Get your tickets soon, very soon, because it would be a tragedy if you didn't get your tickets and you didn't get to come to this, and we don't want anyone to feel bad. So if you are interested in coming to Boatfest, don't hesitate. Get them now. Where can they get these tickets, Boat?
Boatfest.info.
Boatfest.info.
That's right. Of course, Boatfest, if you're a recent listener, it wasn't around last June when we relentlessly plugged this for months and months. This is our annual vintage computer exhibition held in lovely Hurricane, West Virginia. We will have dozens of computers out and on display. There will be trivia contests. There will be workshops. There will be repairs done on site by hopefully Retro Rewind and others. And it's going to be a really, really fun time, and we hope that you'll come and join us.
And it's going to be held, listen, I think it's going to be held in a much better spot, and I think it's going to be, we have a better idea of what we're doing this year, I think, Vote. And I think
it's just been confirmed. Frank in the chat says we will be there.
Outstanding.
So definitely you're going to want to come and bring all your stuff that needs fixing. Last time, Aaron, when you entered the door, I couldn't see your face because it was just a pile of computers in your arms as you lumbered in.
You know, you say that mockingly because I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to bogart Frank and the thing is that would have happened because Frank and his crack staff, Frank and Jason Warrens, worked continuously for the entire festivity, nonstop. Anyway, we're not going to kill this every week. We'll mention it here in a couple months, but this is your 20% tickets gone wake up call because once these are gone, brother, they're gone. There's not going to be any like second tier seating or whatever. These things are going to be gone.
Unless you want to sit on the street outside. That's the
right.
Second tier section.
Yeah, we'll open a window and hold the screen up to you. But that's Boatfest. Give them that information one more time, Boat, where to order.
Boatfest.info.
Right, and you can check the Boatfest section of our Discord for perpetual Boatfest news. We'll be kicking it in. We'll probably hit it a lot harder after we get through Amigathon, which is our next big event. But it should be a lot of fun. We hope to see many of you there, and we hope the people that came last year, boy, we'd love to see you again because that was a lot of fun, wasn't it, Boat?
Absolutely. All right, Aaron, it's time. Let's talk civilization.
Beautiful. There's that lovely MIDI noise that comes out of the speakers when they make it do that. So, we meet again, Civilization. This is our second go-round week here. What is the official name of the second go-round week? Retro Rewind Week, whatever we call it.
We call it a second look.
Second look. The second look, Boat. The game we're second looking at is the Immortal Civilization, or Sid Meier's Civilization, if you want to get picky about it. Released on the Amiga, the year of our Lord, 1992, and the AGA version rolled out in 94. It took them a couple years to get those extra colors squeezed in there, Boat. 4 big discs. Developed by MPS Labs. We know what that means. That's an in-house microprose outfit. On the Amiga, see if you heard any of these, Boats. See if we covered any of these. F-19, Pirates, Gunship 2000, Nighthawk, Railroad Tycoon, Secret Service 2.
Silent Service 2.
Silent Service 2. Red Star. We've covered almost all these. M1. So we've had a cup of coffee with the guys over at Microprose on this one. Designed, of course, by the legendary Sid Meier, who, like I said, aside from the aforementioned items on here, he also was involved in F-15-2, which we just covered a couple weeks ago, Boat. And one of our classic like under the radar success hits, which was Covert Action Boat, which we both thought was great at the time.
Yeah.
I've actually went back to that one a couple times. It's a lot of fun. There's a whole bevy of people that worked on this. I'm not going to go into it. I mean, there's just tons and tons of people that worked on it. You can imagine the way Microprose works that there would be. The Amiga was just a pit stop on the never-ending marathon of ports that this game got. You've got your classic Apple Mac port, the ST got it. The NEC PC-98, the Super Nintendo boat got this one. The DOS got it for Windows, or PC got it for Windows and DOS. The Saturn got this. The PlayStation got it. And there was even a 16-color Tandy PC version of this. So maybe one of these days we'll see this on the Fine and Tandy show that Adam hosts. This was not an Amiga. This was based on another platform. It didn't originate on the Amiga. And this came off of the PC platform that came out in 91. Boat, we covered it so long ago. I don't know how much you remember about what we said before. I went back and watched that episode. Did you happen to catch that this week?
I never go back because I don't want to be influenced by past me.
Well, I love to be influenced by past me. And I can tell you right now, I went back and watched this. I listened to this show. This show was boring. We sucked. This show was, I thought to myself, my God, these guys are no good. They should stop.
Was it back when we were doing the hardware talks too?
No, this wasn't that old. It's like in the 40s. I found it boring and dull. I hate to say it about my own show. So I'm hoping we're gonna be more exciting this time when we talk about Civilization. Now, I don't know when you played this. Give us a little background history on your time with Civilization before the Amigos.
I started my Civilization experience on the Macintosh, and I played Civilization 4. I believe I played it. It was the first and possibly only game that I used Boot Camp for. Boot Camp is when Max made the switch to Intel. It's funny, we're just talking about bridge boards and junk.
Yeah.
When Max made the switch to Intel, you were able to boot natively into Windows, which, you know, if you are a gamer, you're going to want to do that because the Mac gaming scene, not so hot. And I got Civilization 4 for Windows, and I played that game so much.
Yeah,
it's
a very popular version. Yeah.
And after Civilization 4, I dipped my toe into Civilization 5. I own, thanks to I think the Epic Game Store, I own Civilization 6, but a combination of sort of it seemed like the game was sort of the same, combined with the fact that circumstances in my life changed and I don't have as much time to really play, you know, really in-depth strategy games like this anymore, means that I would call myself a Civilization 4 expert only. That is the only game that I can really speak to with any degree of certitude.
So the first time we covered this on the Amigos is the first time you'd played the first Civilization?
Absolutely, yes.
I see. Now, I will tell you, the very first time I played this was actually on my Tandy. I had this up in my apartment in Huntington, and and it's not my kind of game, as you know, Boat, because I'm a shallow, vapid geek that just likes shiny stuff and explosions. But for some reason, this game got its tendrils in me, and I actually really played a lot of this on the Tandy machine. And then when I got into the Amiga, I played even more there. So I was a big fan of this game. And so coming back to it the first time, I don't know what I was thinking, because I'll be honest with you, having listened to that old episode, I'm still not sure what I thought. I was not very good at conveying my opinion on this thing. I will say this time around, and I don't think I did this last time, I played the AGA version of this. I don't know, is that what you played, or did you play the original version?
I spent most of my time with the OCS ECS. I played a little bit on the AGA side, but mostly OCS ECS.
I thought the AGA version was... now... Okay, so I want to cover this before I forget, so I'm going to cover it right now. This game, when you play this off of a disk drive, I hated it. It was really slow, all right, back in the day on my 1000. And I've heard a lot of people talking about how this game, it kind of lumbers along. this is one of those games that plays a lot better now with WHD load and stuff than it ever did back in the day. It loads quicker. It's not nearly as irritating. But with all that said, I found it a less smooth experience than I was on the Tandy on the DOS version, because I don't know why. I guess I just didn't think it was as smooth. And I was going to ask you about this because I tried this. I actually tried emulation on this and the Mister on this. How did you find it was to move around the map with the cursor?
Well, I used the I played this on FSUAE.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Philistine, so I have a numpad.
Yeah.
And using the numpad, you get around just fine.
Now this is something I didn't know the first time we played this. You can hit the G button, and then your mouse will let you move. You can just point where you want to go, and your guys go there.
Yeah.
But it worked fine. It worked good. The problem I had was just getting the cursor in a position where I could get my guys to move around, to explore. And so I had a little bit of trouble with it. And I had it's everywhere I did it. It was the same way. So I'm assuming that's sort of the way it was baked into the game. So we should talk about what you do in this game. This game is, I was going to say it's pretty simple, but it's not. You basically start out by picking a path to follow from one of the provided civilizations that you could start with. You've got, help me out here, but I can't remember all these. So now you've got Rome. You've got like a Chinese dynasty.
There's Greece.
Zulus.
There's the Aztecs.
Yeah.
There's America. Really, America doesn't belong with any of these things. America is way too new of a civilization, but they have to put it in there.
I never played them, by the way. And by the way,
I played them. I never do normally, but I did this time, and it's quite hilarious. I'll go into it later.
I played, so as you know, as I mentioned earlier, I've gotten into Rome quite a bit here at Roman history. So I played Rome every time, and I tried a couple different methods to see how I could progress the Romans, And sometimes I tried to do it because as you go through the game, once you pick, and I've heard that a lot of this is just it's sort of surface level differences in this version of Civilization. Now, in future versions, there's a lot more in-depth differences, but I've heard that it's mostly surface. There's a little bit of differences in the different, different civilizations you pick in this. But it's fun to tinker around. This is a game that you can play over and over, and you can just sort of change your approach. But what you're doing in this is you're trying to advance your civilization. You're trying to help them create cities. You're trying to help them advance their technology. You're trying to help them advance their art. You're trying to help them advance their knowledge. And you're also trying to coexist with your neighbors. Who will turn up. Sometimes you can't do that. And so this game goes in turns. And so you will go at the very beginning of the game, you pretty much all you can do is you found yourself a city, and then you go out and look around. And this is one of those games that has the old fog of war boat that everything's black until you go there. And then you can sort of work out the map. So for the longest time, you're just trying to see where you're at. What's it look like? Where is the water? Where are the deserts? Stuff like that. And then you can start actually ginning up your cities. Do I need a militia here? Do I need a granary? And then you can also eventually you can start working on your society as a whole. Maybe we need to discover how to use bronze. Maybe we need an alphabet. Maybe let's figure out how to use the wheel. These are all different aspects of the game that you'll come across, and you've got these. You've got these chains that come up that require certain elements to be figured out before you can move to the next element. For example, I would love to have chariots. I'm Roman. All right, well, guess what? You can't have a chariot without a wheel, brother. And probably some mathematics I'm thrown in there. So you have to go through all the different various aspects of a skill tree to get to the better and cooler stuff. I think that's sort of summarizes that part of it, Bo. You want to add anything to that?
Well, I think the best way to describe this game is this is the original 4X game, if you're familiar with the
there it is, which
series.
I was not.
This is you've got explore, exploit, exterminate, and examine. I can never remember what the fourth X is, but it's something else. Okay, and so you're basically wandering around. You're expand. Oh, expand. That's what it is. You're making your city bigger. You're harvesting the natural resources.
Yeah.
And you're going to town on the competition, knocking them out either with diplomacy or with straight up war.
Yeah. What was your
And
preference on that, by the way? Do you change it every time, or did you like to be aggressive when you played?
Well, this normally when I play, I always try and get like the cultural victory, because I think that's more important than I think it's more interesting because you get to explore more aspects of the tech tree. However, I'll tell you what always happens. I always start, it's like I'm all peaceable, and then somebody starts getting all up in my business.
Yeah.
And so what I have to do is I have to retaliate, and then all of a sudden I turn into Genghis Khan and I go scorched earth on everybody. Okay,
And it's
my anger seeds.
They've been very cunning with the conflict in this. And just like Boat said, I'll give you an example. I'm playing the Romans. I'm searching out my business. I come across the Zulus. All right, they're sending, and when you come across like another civilization, they'll send out an envoy generally, and they'll try to work out a deal. At least most of the time, unless it's the barbarians. And so the envoy comes out. He goes, "Listen," he's like, "Well, we want to sue for peace." Okay, that's cool. Then they're like, "We notice that you guys are ignorant in the ways of whatever. Maybe we could do a little swap." So it's actually good for you because you're swapping skills with this other crew. But they word it so crappily. They literally say, like, "We notice that you're dumb in the ways of this," and little needles. And then sometimes they'll be like, "Listen, now that we've got peace, we think you need to pledge X amount of gold." You get sometimes, now listen, sometimes they'll give you the money. They think, okay, we don't want to screw this guy, but sometimes they want you to pay them for peace. No one wants to pay for peace. That's no good. These little needling things, sometimes they happen to be, their cities or their troops happen to be somewhere that you want to be, resource city, right? And you've got no choice but to go there and stomp a mud hole in them,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're just in the mood and you've built up a crap load of militia. You got to do something with them. Let's go invade that town, and you do it. It's good for a laugh. So you won't go through the whole game being Mr. Peaceful, because I never do. I don't know if you do that ever. I always fight people. I don't necessarily want to.
You can't go through the game and not have to fight. You'll be overrun.
Well, but there's also barbarians that just come out, and those guys you have to deal with. You don't have a choice on them.
Right. And but sometimes you're going to run into hostilities that the people will not take no for an answer.
Yeah.
They'll refuse offers for tribute and things like that too. But I'll tell you, here's the thing. It's time we've come to the show where I talk about why this game is one of the greatest games that's ever been made.
Thank God you didn't say why it sucked, because I had to get in the car and drive over there. I was afraid you were going to bury it.
This game, I believe this game is the greatest strategy game that's ever appeared on a computer platform, and I'll tell you why. This game plays like a board game, okay? It's a turn-based game in which every turn you are accomplishing something. There's never turns that go by that you don't feel like something has been done, okay? So the way that the game is laid out is that you are constantly having to make decisions and having to make choices. And the choices are always laid out for you in easy to understand terms. You're never unsure what to do or where to go. This game, through a series of tooltips, or not, they're not really tooltips, but they're just sort of like hints that appear at the beginning of the game. They guide you through what the game wants you to do, but they don't do it in such a way that railroads you into making you feel like you don't have a choice. So, for example, when you start the game, you see your little covered wagon, and it's like, okay, it's time to found a city, roam about and see a good place to find a city. And when you roll over a place that the game thinks might be a good city, a little thing pops up and it says, hey, this might be a good place to found a city. Now, do you have to build your city there? No, you can keep going, but the game helps you out and you're like, oh, thanks game. All right, I'll do that. And it plays right into the theme of the game that you are not alone in this. You are a group of settlers with advisors, and your advisors are there to help you as much as they can. It's a fantastic way to not make the game seem like it's giving you this tutorial. Instead, it's like, oh, you've got these really, really smart people and they're going to help you choose. But in the end, at the end of the day, you are the dictator. You decide what is best for your civilization. When you are done taking a turn, you hit the turn over button, and the only time where the only thing that I've noticed, like you were talking about speed earlier,
Yeah.
the longer you get into these games, the more the speed kind of chugs along.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the game, the computer's taking their turn, and I mean, you're almost right back in it almost immediately. But when things start getting hairier, it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, I'll tell you what else is great about this game. This game teaches you things about history, and it does it in such a way that's cool.
Yeah.
Whenever you develop a new technology, there's a very well-written little paragraph that appears on the screen. You've got a little graphic, and you've got some informative text that tells you about what you've just built. And it's cool because you spend a certain amount of turns. You might spend, 26 turns building a certain kind of military unit for the first time. And after that long, long wait, you kind of want to know about it. And because Civilization is a game that takes place from a very, very high bird's eye view, it's almost like an airplane's eye view. You don't get close-ups of anything in the actual gameplay. So the game brings you the graphics in these little you can either see them on the info screen with the paragraph, or what's really, really cool that I actually like more about Civ 1 than the later Civ games is when you add things to your city, you actually see like a 3D blueprint of your city, like a 3D map, like an isometric map, and you see the building appear in the city.
Yeah.
Like in the Civ 4, you don't get that. Like you see like the city, you sort of see it on the overhead screen a little bit, but I really, really like the full screen like building where your building appears and you actually see your city grow before your eyes.
Yeah. There's a tab you can go to that just looks at the city, so you can occasionally check it out.
It's fantastic.
Plus the fact that you can expand like your castle or whatever, and you get to pick what it's. So I mean, it's not like it's D-paint, but you sort of get to pick the stuff that happens to it, so you can sort of design your own. It's a little tidbit that gives you a little extra spice on the steak. You know what I mean?
Well, it makes you feel like you're part of the world, and the thing that's great, the thing that I think puts this over the top over a game like SimCity is that in SimCity, you're screwed pretty early on, like because of the way that the budgets run and because of the way that the money is constantly flowing out of your account. Okay. In Civilization, it makes you feel like you can do anything and you can approach anything from any way you want. And that's super, super empowering as a player because you're like, oh, well, this past game, I developed mathematics first before I developed the wheel. Well, in this game, I'm going to go all in on bronze working and see where that gets me. And the game doesn't come out and say, listen, you're an idiot, or it doesn't. There are no adverse effects that happen. Now, later on down the road, maybe you've spent so much time working on, paper mills and stuff that you're going to get run over when the military comes to town.
Yeah, when the tanks roll in. Yeah,
but when you're on your way doing that, you're having fun because you're building your civilization the way that you want to. And because of the cutscenes, you're learning about all these different technologies.
Yeah.
It's so, so nice. Now, is the music constant in this game? No, the music only comes to town when you build something. Yeah, an event happens. Now, this is where I get into where I'm playing America. Okay. So in this game, it matches up your ethnicity. Where it's like you get a random ethnicity with your nation. So like America doesn't look like a bunch of colonial settlers. They look like, for example, mine looked like Asians. And so like my domestic policy advisor, I swear, looked exactly like Genghis Khan or somebody like that. He looked like this old warlord.
Think how much tougher we'd be if that was true.
Exactly. I wish that were the case. And so that I really find that aspect of the game fun too, that even though it's based on historical civilizations, you're kind of name checked with things like the names of cities and things like that, the names of your figures. Like Abraham Lincoln was the name of my first settler, because they are randomly generated otherwise. It's just kind of a neat contrast, and to me, I really love that. I thought that was so much cooler than actually having Abraham Lincoln living in 3000 BC or whatever.
Yeah, they do a great job of shuffling the deck of civilizations and then sprinkling them around to make it more interesting and more. I like that aspect of it. You're right. I agree with that. Just like and you were talking about the historical elements of this. You're so right, because you think to yourself, wait a minute, your founder in 300,000 BC's Lincoln. Yeah, you're not going to go to history class with that knowledge, but all the stuff that you build, all the stuff on that knowledge tree, it's logical. You've got to learn you have to have an alphabet before you could have written law, stuff like that. But it makes sense. But like Boat said, every time you get something, you get a nice big screen to read what's going on. This is what this did. This is why this happened. These are the people that were involved in this. It is a great way for a kid to learn something, or an adult, depending on who you are. And then when you get to tinker around, I mean, you were talking about this compared to SimCity. I like this way more. Now, that doesn't mean SimCity is not a better game or is a worse game. I don't even. SimCity is like to me, it's more of a creative outlet. This is more of a game to me. Now, that much said.
Yeah, I absolutely, because it is. This is a game that has a winning side and a losing side.
Right.
SimCity doesn't have that.
But with all that said, they pack so much. We've played a lot of games on the Amiga and other machines that are really complex, and they seem really complex. This is a game that I never thought was super duper complex, but it's super duper deep. And it gives you almost unlimited options to play.
Well, here's the thing. What this is it's complexity done right.
Yeah. Everything is explained. It's like Boat said, but the namings of stuff. Like, for example, I played Rome. My first city was Rome, named Rome. The second city, and they don't make you name it that stuff. You can do whatever you want. You can name it Boat's house, whatever. But you're learning something. You're learning something about this. You're learning some of the big players that were involved in your chosen civilization. You're learning about all the wonders of the earth that are, stuff like that. This stuff's important to know, and it's also they've introduced it in a way that's fun, and they've also done a good job of adding the ability to look stuff up if you don't understand it. You can look up what this stuff is. It'll tell you everything's available. You can look through it, and it'll tell you what it is in case you forget or whatever. It makes it perfectly simple. I remember playing this back on the Tandy with a big, thick book. Remember the old book? Mm-hmm. And I needed that book because the book would show you all the skill trees and stuff. But I didn't use the book this time. I just went through and just tried to because the book helps if you could get the docs for this, because you can look and see, okay, if you've got a place you want to go, you need the book.
Right.
Okay, I want to have this. Well, I don't know the path to get there. Even though it's logical, you may not know it because it may be 6 or 7 or 10 steps down the line. But I had a lot of fun just going free form. I think that's the way I'm going to play from now on, because it felt more natural to me. And as I went through, as my civilization went on, and depending on where I was at, my resources, the enemies, I could kind of, instead of like in the old days, I would just go towards a goal, which was linear thinking. Now it gives me the ability to kind of mold my strategies and mold my civilization around my surroundings, which is more realistic in the first place.
Right. And I'll tell you the way to suck all of the fun out of Civilization, and this is actually why I stopped playing Civ 4, is I started looking into ways to min-max victory, because you can, now I don't know, I'm sure that this has been done with Civ 1, but there are sites you can go to that are like, okay, you need to make 3 cities and you need to make them this far apart. This is your military city and this is what you need to put here. And there's ways that you can win every single time if you follow this set. But talk about making a game not fun at all.
Yeah.
Like that. The key about Civilization that just makes it so great is the feeling of anything is possible. I can grow this civilization in any way that I want. I can focus on whatever I want. And even if I am not the ultimate winner of all time, I know that I have something unique that you never ever play the same game twice with Civilization. Even if you make the same choices, the randomness of the world map that you start in is going to be totally different. That's going to affect things. And so of course the behavior of the other civilizations. Talking about the docs, one thing we should also mention is this is one of the first games I know of that came with a mini instruction manual inside the game itself. The
Yeah.
Civilopedia up there is always up there in the top right, and you can look stuff up on there. Talk about just, people that thought of everything. It all comes down to having just, I really do. I don't throw the word genius around too much when it comes to these game designers. I think a lot of times they get more credit than they deserve. Sid Meier, genius,
Yeah.
complete genius, because if you can make the complex comprehensible in a way that he does with this game, that is a stroke of genius.
Speaking of him, just a little bit about the making of this game. And there's a famous quote that Sid Meier said when he was asked about the development of this game. And the quote is, "One of my big rules has always been double it or cut it in half." He cut the map sizes in half less than a month before the release of this game, because he thought there was too much. He would take away or add automated stuff. He had a plan. He had some foresight. He wanted the game to flow a certain way. Something else I didn't know about this, Boat, and I thought this was interesting. You've heard of the Avalon Hill board game from way, way back called Civilization, I'm assuming.
No. Is there a game called Civilization from Avalon Hill?
There was. But this is way back, before this game.
Okay.
And as this game was being made, they were afraid that they were going to have an issue because they wanted to call this Civilization. And so they actually worked out a deal with Avalon Hill. And the funny thing is, because this game does feel like a board game, and me and you have played enough of these sorts of games, it's got that feel to it. But the funny thing is, in 2002, Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, was released, which basically is a board game based on the game that was sort of loosely based on a board game.
And so, I remember you have or had a copy of this game.
I've seen it. I don't think I have it.
I remember seeing it on your shelf at some point in the past.
Maybe I do have it in here. I'm not 100% sure if I'm honest. But I never have played it. I will say that.
No.
It's something I always wanted to try. Listen, this game made all the lists in terms of its popularity. Listen, here's high praise, Boat. Number 3 best game of 1992, Amiga Joker. Enough said.
Yeah. If the Joker's down with it, it's good.
And it won Best Simulation of 92. So when you win the award of Joker, you're King Dong, brother. In November of 96, it was voted number 1 overall in the best 150 games of all time. High praise.
Yeah.
And Game Informer, 62 in the top 100 of all time. These things just keep going on. I'm not going to go through, but they did well. Now, in the Amiga realm, as you can imagine, everyone, their brother, reviewed this because it came out in the sweet spot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Lemon gives the OCS version of this an 8.8. The AGA version, hilariously, gets an 8.6. But, I mean, from what I read, that's just a small discrepancy. They're both good. I mean, I played the AGA version. I thought it was pretty good. Most of the magazines give this a rating somewhere in the low 90s to the high 80s. There were a couple outliers, but they were, goofy. The overall magazine rating score is 86%. The AGA version overall had an 88. So, again, you're in the same ballpark. I mean, the AGA version didn't reinvent the wheel, if you know what I mean. They just gave it some more colors. So this was pretty much well praised across the board. Now, we did mention, Boat, that this came out on a multitude of systems. And you specifically asked me to pull one up for a comparison. Tell the people what that was.
So we are going to take a look at the Macintosh version. And I've got to say, this comes from the only Graham Vebke, who suggested on the Discord that we take a look at the Mac version. The Macintosh version is amazing. And it all comes down to resolution and the resolution limitations of the Amiga. This thing could run on the Mac at 724 by 1024 by 768. And it looks like a modern computer game. I mean, it looks like a game from the Windows 95 era. That's where I sort of draw the line of modern computer games, because the graphics are such high resolution. And it goes to show that in the realm of strategy games, computers are always at the forefront, obviously. And if you are a strategy game guy, you probably moved off of the Amiga sooner than many other types of games if you were a gamer of that stripe, just because the experience that you're going to have playing a game that has the kind of screen real estate of the Macintosh. And I looked at the DOS version. The DOS version doesn't look, it looks more like the Amiga version.
Yeah, it doesn't look this good.
And so I don't know, if Sid Meier was a big Mac guy and he wanted to make sure that this system got a great port, or maybe just the default Mac of the time was going to give you a better screen resolution than the average PC at the time. I don't know how it happened. You would think that the PC version, the VGA version of this would look more similar to this, but I mean, the Amiga version, both the OCS and the AGA version look like a child's toy compared to the Macintosh version.
I don't know.
That's not something you say a lot.
Do you know what year? I'm going to look here real quick to see what year the Mac version came out. I've got to pull it up here because I was kind of wondering, because you're right. It does look head and shoulders above the others, but I think it came out 93. So it wasn't too far along.
Same year as the AGA version.
Listen, I've played the VGA version of this, right? And the 16-color version, and I think they're both more attractive than the Amiga version. I think the Amiga version still got jobbed out, if I'm honest. However, neither one of them look as tight as the Mac version.
Speaking of jobbed out, we should take a moment to talk about the good old AGA version of Civilization. Another total disappointment and another sort of, nail in the coffin of the, Amiga going forward as being any sort of a relevant gaming platform into the 90s. All that was added, again, just a few extra colors. Nothing has been added in terms of extra, there's the cut scenes are not any different. There's no extra animation or anything. Just total disappointment from AGA, whose code name probably was Disappointment.
To be fair, Boat, as you bury this thing yet again, you've got to have the incentive to do more work on these, and I don't think the AGA systems were creating enough extra cash in the coffers of these companies to merit a proper port. I have no doubt that they could have done more with what they've got here if they'd wanted to. But with all that said, one would wonder, I was just thinking about this, the best way to play Civilization on your Amiga may be to run it under the Mac. That would be great.
As long as you've got a tricked out Amiga.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get that kind of, I don't know what the fidelity was on a Mac of that era, but still, it is kind of funny to think about. But, listen, with all that said, and Boat's burial aside, this is totally playable on the Amiga. It totally works. I played it for hours. I'll give you 2 tidbits. You're going to come across, at least in the versions I played, this happened in all the versions, a doc check to get you to look up a certain thing. It's a copy protection. I'm sure you came across it as well, Boat.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get past the copy protection, which was cracked, it's going to ask you where you want to save your file. Do not save it on the hard disk, because you then will not your game will be gone. This happened to me, and I was furious. You need to put a blank disk in the virtual drive if you're playing an emulated version, because otherwise I screwed myself one time, and I had a honey of a game going too, Boat. I mean, I had everything set up perfectly. I had sentries, and I had fortified spots. I was ready, and then I lost everything. It was a real bummer. So.
I've never, whenever I'm prompted to save, I never save my game in an emulator at all, because in my experience, most of the time it just never works. I just use the save states in FSUA.
Well, it didn't give me a choice, unfortunately. It just did it. It just asked me where I wanted to save it. I was like, oh. So that's a little FYI. Boat, did we get any Discord action?
We did. Before we go there, though, we're so happy to have Amiga Cami in the chat right now, and she says that an 030 with AGA is enough to play Civilization easily, and she says even Warcraft 2 is totally playable on AGA with an 030. So look, the Amiga surprisingly competent in Macintosh emulation. Of course, many videos have been made from RMC and others about the capabilities of the Amiga as a Macintosh emulator.
We should try that sometime, Boat, as a show. Well, we should try some Mac games on the Amiga and see how they work. That'd be kind of fun.
I would love to do that. We got 2 reviews. Actually, we got 3 reviews this week. Our first comes from Lord Soup. He says, I'm a Civ junkie and cut my teeth on an A500. For a long time, I didn't notice how achingly, mind-numbingly slow Amiga Civ is.
Yes.
But it's intact and has all the features and everything, but I can only recommend it nowadays on a super accelerated Amiga and high-end big box Amigas. I don't think I can score it fairly, as your experience will vary on your hardware. It's still a great game if you allot a long time to it, but it's super chuggy on an A1200. Best played on a PC, 386 or faster if you can. If you've spent big bucks making a Super Miggy, it's 10 out of 10. Level Lord writes, I will never forget the day when I played Civilization for the first time on Amiga. Since strategy and Sims are almost the only games I would play and still are, trusty local pirate who knows my weakness called me and says he's got something good for me. I sat in the car and drove to his place, grabbed the floppies, and went back home. It was love on first sight, and Civ was my favorite franchise for years until Sid & Co. managed to water it down and turn it into mainstream garbage. Ooh, burial.
Ooh, burial, yeah.
I played and finished Civ 1 many times with all nations and on different Amigas, and just a couple months ago played and finished it on my A4000 one more time. Because I knew what to expect, I was not disappointed with the graphics or sound, and gameplay was still top-notch. It glued me to the seat and required one more turn from me. It's aged very well. Before Civ, there were not many strategy games of that caliber, and main go-to games were Deuteros, Millennium, Supremacy, and Battle Isle that I can remember. Everything else faded away. Civ was incredibly innovative. It was an incredibly innovative way to play strategy games. It introduced 4X, and which is holding up even today, introduced research in the game with the direct benefit from it, and even included parts where you can micromanage your cities so they can produce what is needed in the moment. It's a shame that all new Civ games are basically the same as Civ 1, expanded a bit, but nothing truly new was introduced into the franchise. Civ 1 can only get one score from me, and it is a 10+. And finally, the legend, Graham W. Vebke writes, I spent a lot of time in the 1990s playing Civilization on the Atari ST. While I enjoyed playing this on the ST a lot, I overall spent way more time playing this on MS-DOS because of the higher resolution, allowing you to see much more of the gameplay area.
Yeah.
The same issue is present with the Amiga version of this game. While it does a great job with the visuals and sound, though it will never be as good as MS-DOS or the superior Macintosh version due to the lower resolution, and of course, the Roland MT32 audio as well. That's right.
Gotta have that.
The Amiga game plays well, but it is indeed slower than both the MS-DOS and ST versions of the game, so I think you need at least 2 mega RAM and at least an 030 to really enjoy this game on the Amiga. The mouse cursor on the Amiga version is weird too. Aside from that, there's a good time to be had here if you enjoy 4X strategy games. It's a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, he said that the cursor's weird. Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's slam the door on this sucker. I looked this up on the eBay poster, and this would be one, if you're going to own one, this would be the worst one to have because you get that big beefy manual, brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's also like a quick chart for the skill tree involved. There's a lot of stuff in there. I saw these for sale in the USA, Boat. $64, $40. The discs were selling for $23. However, I did see this sell for $64, and I also saw it sell for $28. So it ain't cheap, but it's not the worst thing we ever saw, Boatster.
Yeah. All right, Aaron. Well, why don't we leave Civilization and see what kind of strange and wonderful things have been happening on the YouTube channel.
Very good. I really enjoyed that this week, by the way. This is I enjoyed this game a lot, and I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed it, so it's going to be back in the rotation, brother. So this week, Boat, got a few offerings here. Let's talk about the latest edition of the Atari ST show. But what do you want to say about this one, man?
So this is Enduro Racer. Another arcade port. We've done a couple arcade ports on the Atari ST show.
Yes, we have.
This is one that is not the best. It is not the best. To be honest with you, Enduro Racer I don't think is the best motorcycle racing game even in the arcade.
No.
And it doesn't get any extra points on the home conversions. Although I must say, the strap line on this is it better, or is the Specky version better? That's an open question, because this game and the ZX Spectrum version look a lot alike. There's not a lot to recommend about the Atari ST version of Enduro Racer, but you should still listen to the show because we are hilarious.
This is the answer to the age-old question. It's like, I'm thirsty. I'll have a big glass of room temperature water. Like, it will quench your thirst, but you're not gonna be like, man, that's some good water. You're gonna be like,
Right.
you're just gonna move on. That's basically the way I look at it. But we had a good time, like you said, Boat. Um, the other item on the Dockaroo here, boy, we're begging for some views on this one. Feel free to come check this out, everybody. It's myself and that nefarious Brent. And this week, we spun the wheel and we made the religious deal, Boat. This is religious games that are about religion. And actually, I enjoyed this episode quite a bit, if I'm honest, because it was a fun challenge. We both challenged ourselves to try to find something different. Now, I failed the challenge horribly, but I thought Brent's game was real interesting. Now, I ended up picking. Bo, you're sort of a biblical scholar. How would you pronounce this guy's name?
I would call it just Onesimus.
Onesimus. There you go. I've heard several different pronunciations. I was calling
Now,
it.
I don't recall this. I don't recall this name from the Bible.
Yeah, he was
So,
mentioned, I think, 3 times in the Bible.
Okay. Okay.
Or on the Simus, whatever you want to call it. I also call it
It's
crap.
Oneaters.
You can also call it Jill of the Jungle, because this is what happens when you take a religious theme and splash it over top of Jill of the Jungle. So if you like those kind of dopey, doofusy platformers from back in the early 90s on the DOS machine, you're a Bitis, brother, and you get to learn something about religion. Brent's game, on the other hand, was far less crap. Brent picked a really interesting game called Mandagon, and this game is got a great vibe. It's a free game on Steam, Boat, by the way, from 2016. I do really urge you guys to give this one a shot. Like I said, it's totally free. They've also got phone versions, Boat. This is a very chill game where you can't die. You just sort of explore, and it's wrapped in this story. I really found this quite a soothing game. Now, but aside from that, there's also this really deep, intricate tale that I boated up because somehow I just skipped past all the intricate religious parts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what is the religion this game is affiliated with?
It's I don't remember. It's Buddhism something. I don't. Hey, watch the show to find out, brother. But that's the plus.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement.
But I call it soothing, man. It's like a nice, quiet trip to the Himalayas, Boat. You know, I enjoyed it. So yeah, there you go. That's all we've got on the main channel. Let's scoot over to the Stream Team channel. We got a few things on offer. Last week I released. You're gonna love this, Boat. I went back and I'm starting to release the parts of the Thanks for Giving Marathon 2021 that we never released because they were so good that we forgot to release them. And so I'm starting to release them slowly. On this particular wheel spin, we play games on the TRS-80 color computer and the Atari 7800, Boat. So we play a bunch of games. So if you want to watch me and Brent play some games, this is your thing. Thanks for Giving Marathon from last year. And I'll be pushing these out every so often. A week ago, Boat, if you'll recall, I did a little thing called the Friday Night Disaster Stream, brother. And this was from my arcade, and it answered the age-old question, how do these Amiga games play on an arcade machine? Are they any good? Your thoughts, Boat?
I would think that they would translate very, very well to an arcade machine because the Amiga is a joystick-based device with a button on it. So
that's right.
It seems like you would have better luck playing Amiga games with an arcade stick than, say, any sort of a console game.
Correct answer. And actually, they play great on here. I go through a whole bevy of games on the Amiga, and then we start cranking up some Game Boy Color. We start. Frodo came in, Boat, and he says, "Listen," he goes, "you need to load up the Game Boy Color, and you need to play this game that's based on the old animated show Dexter's Laboratory." I'm like, okay, and I did it.
Looks
and
like
sure
an
enough,
elevator action.
It's a awesome redone elevator action for the Game Boy Color.
Cool.
I
liked that show too when it was
This is one you need to play, Boat. We had a lot of fun with this one. But we tried a little bit of everything. We read a couple hours, had a good time. This is my first attempt to do a proper stream from the arcade, and it worked pretty good.
Let me tell you something. Those pinball machines look solid gold money in the background.
You like that, Boat?
I love it.
That's the glamour shot, Boat, because I
is.
don't want them looking at me, for God's sakes. So anyway, if you like some just arcade action, pop over and check that out. That's on the Amiga games on an arcade machine. Lastly, King Dong is back, brother. It's Jack Flack. This is a whole show Sprite Castle plays dedicated to Zaxxon, Boat. I'm a big fan of the old Zax myself. And so Flag goes through and plays this thing on every conceivable platform he can think of.
It certainly got released on everything.
It did. Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on the old Zaxxon, brother?
Not a fan.
Really?
Not a fan. I don't care for shooters. I don't like Return of the Jedi either. I just don't care for isometric.
I'll give you that
shooters.
one. This was the King Dong of isometric shooters, but I mean, it's the first one.
Now, I will say that if I was around back in the day and I saw this for the first time, this is a viewpoint that none had ever seen, and I'm sure it would have drawn me in.
I know I've mentioned this before. I'm going to say it again because it's apropos. I was watching Entertainment Tonight with my family, and they're like, ladies and gentlemen, in the teaser, they're like, prepare yourself for the first 3D video game. And this they just showed this, and it had stars commenting on how cool it looked.
Yeah.
This was a big deal when it came out. I know people laugh at that, but it's true. I was sitting there, and he goes through a ton of different versions. ColecoVision, he goes through a bunch of different versions, including after getting a tip, he plays the Master System Zaxxon 3D. I didn't realize there's a way you could turn off the 3D in that game, Boat. It still stinks, but you can do it. So anyway, check out the Flaxter. It was good time, and Flack's always entertaining, always fun to watch his streams. I think, Boat, that is all we have, my friend.
All right. Well, Aaron, before we get out of here, we need to figure out, the holidays are upon us.
Yeah.
And so
you look like you're slowly deflating, Boat. What's going on over?
It's-
Come on, fire back up. It's not over yet.
Sorry, it's whenever the Stream Team segment comes on, I sort of drift into a world of my
What
own.
the hell? That's the best segment.
It's time, Aaron, to do a little bit of Christmas games. What's coming up next week?
Well, guess what? You're going to be prepared to be amazed. Bam! Happy holidays from the Amigos, because we didn't know, but now we do know. Tell them what we're doing, Boat.
Christmas Lemmings.
Christmas Lemmings
is
next
week's
week.
game. So
It'll be
join
cool.
us, won't you? And of course, before we say goodbye, we want to thank all of the people that make this show happen, including all of our Patreon supporters. If you like the show and you want to send us a couple bucks, patreon.com/Amigos podcast is a way you can do that. You also get cool magnets at the end of the year, Christmas cards, and you can become a member of the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server, which is where all the coolest retro people online hang out. We also broadcast this show every Friday at twitch.tv/Amigos. Oh, I messed this up last time. I think it's /Amigos Retro Gaming. It is twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. And you can join in the chat. We got a nice little crowd here this evening. We appreciate all the fine folks in the chat that are keeping us going. And finally, we leave you with a list of all of these people that are the aforementioned with the haunting love theme of Civilization. Guys, have a great week. We will see you next time. And until then, adios.
Adios.